All right, welcome back to CIO Insight. I'm your host, Natalie Teeter at the Pulse Network, and of course we have Eric Lundquist.
Right, I
And
think we're going to have Jason come on, right? Jason
yes,
Brooks?
yes, you are correct. Jason Brooks, editor-chief of eweeklabs.com. Jason? Hi, Jason.
Hi, how's it going?
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Oh, well, that's
Oh.
great, great.
Say hi to Natalie, our new co-host on the show here. Jason's a regular.
Yes, yes, I'm the one person who is not the regular here. One of these things is not like the other here. So, Jason, what do you have for us today?
Well, Eric and I were going to chat a little bit about Apple in the enterprise and kind of where that stands and, what we see happening.
Well, there's been, I don't know if there's a question, the Mac Air came out and was sort of seen as, we did a story on this a couple of weeks ago, Jason. Is this like the perfect laptop? They've just come out with a new operating system. And most of these, a lot of the Apple products come in from the outside. The executives bring them into the companies. But I'm just curious, with labs, do you see, does Apple have enough products, have a substantial software out there that it can start to be seen as the foundation for an enterprise? So Jason, if you were starting up a business today and you had going to have 100 employees, would you outfit them all with Apple?
Well, I think that we can start with kind of a cliche. You want the best tool for the job, right? There's areas, there's a lot of different places where you're going to have an operating system where the pieces that Apple plays in. So, right now Apple is in a real solid position client side, right? There's a lot of, for instance, if you're talking about your developers, in your organization. You want people to be productive. You want them to use what they feel that they're going to kind of get the most productivity out of. And for a lot of people, that right now is a Mac. It's kind of a particularly for that audience, they've got a real mix of the consumer focused, just working, qualities, but plus also. You've got Unix under the covers and various open source frameworks and tools are pretty amenable to the Mac, and so there's a lot of people who are choosing it. I mean, we go to shows and conferences, and a lot of times it's just it's a sea of those glowing Mac logos out there. So I mean that's a part of it. I think that a big piece of it is that it kind of points to. I think what is a positive trend that rather than say we're going to go across the board on a single platform, that you say, well, what are we trying to accomplish here, and what's the best tool for that, and not worry so much about controlling everything at that OS level. And there's some challenges with that because if you're set up to manage Windows. And you have to do some work to work your Macs in, but I think that when it comes down to it, and people is your big resource. You give them the tools that they're going to be the most effective with.
All right. So I think the idea that you'd be in an all Apple world is really maybe it works only down in Cupertino or something. I mean, in any environment, you're going to have a mix between Apple's, your favorite, Linux and open source, probably, a Windows in there also. So I guess the question really is, how do you think Apple fits into that sort of more heterogeneous computing environment?
Well, I think they fit in pretty well. Like I sort of mentioned, it's Apple's strength in the consumer electronics space right now, and they're just a real powerhouse there. Combined with these trends around consumerization of IT. I mean, they're really forcing organizations to think differently about, their platforms. And I think that when you're talking about client side, it makes a lot of sense. And especially when the more applications you're going to be deploying through web interfaces, say, You can, it doesn't matter so much which particular platform, you're standardizing on the client side.
Yeah. What about on the
for-
server side, Jason?
Yeah,
I'm curious what you
that's
think on
what I
that
was
side.
about to mention. Yeah, on the server side, it's a lot less clear of a picture, really, because Apple, for a few years, had they were selling the Xserve. It's pizza box server. They got rid of that with fairly short amount of notice, and in this latest version of Lion, there's the most people are focused on the desktop side of it, but there's also a server version of Lion. PJ Connolly, one of our analysts, he reviewed both of them, and he was a little troubled by the kind of the unclear signals about just how much should companies rely on the server component. And my personal pet peeve with Apple on the server is that you look at what is the single biggest trend right over the past set of years around servers, and that's virtualization. And you can't you can't virtualize Apple server on non-Apple hardware. Now, since Apple isn't making the standard kind of data center servers anymore, you go to what amounts to a Mac Mini or a workstation type Mac for running Apple server. There's a real question mark. I mean, I'm really wondering. It's years ago I predicted that Apple would come out with a VMware edition that would let you run a Mac server on a vSphere, and that just hasn't happened yet. So there's a little bit of a question mark about exactly where they're going to go, and one possibility is that we're going to see them point people toward the cloud and their iCloud offering for some of this functionality when they when that goes live. But
I mean, I was curious about that. So the iCloud, I mean, it's really been sort of pushed and promoted as a consumer product, which I understand, a way so you don't have to have a way to coordinate 4 or 5 devices. But as you said, traditionally on the infrastructure side, Apple has been very strong about not separating their software from their hardware, which really makes it difficult in terms of virtualized entities, and virtualization is sort of what it's all about these days. So do you think that Apple in the enterprise really on the infrastructure side doesn't have the opportunities until it really decides to be able to offer that cloud-based offering or do the virtualization piece, which I don't see happening at all?
Yeah, well, what I think it is I think like every company looks to what's the lowest hanging fruit. Where are our opportunities right now? And Apple has had so much growth in the sort of consumer electronic space, and they have been able to go beyond just being a provider of Walkmans or a provider of just your home PC into a really an important platform, especially in mobile devices with iOS, that I think that's where they're going to keep their focus. And this is where I think about Apple's talked a lot about HTML5 over the years, and they have with Safari, they have made having a spot on the enabling web applications a big focus as well. So I think what they're just going to do is they're going to focus on the client side, and they are going to be open to various backends. I mean, that's really where it pays for them to place their focus. And I'm seeing, one thing I wanted to mention here about iOS is that coming in iOS 5, I think is going to be a big feature that's really going to make life easier for a lot of enterprises who want to use these devices, and that's allowing iOS devices to stand alone more. As it stands right now, you have to have an iTunes instance to get your firmware upgrades. And so every platform has security vulnerabilities that come along. As it stands right now, when you've got your iOS device that you need to get the latest fixes on it, you've got to hook it up to an iTunes instance, and then that gets into all sorts of things about, okay, well, synchronizing what music or apps or this or that you have on there. When iOS 5 comes out, and it's able from the device directly to go over the internet and get its updates and kind of be separated from iTunes, I think that it's going to work a lot better for organizations, and you'll just be able to treat that device as a standalone client and not worry about, okay, well, where's the home base for this guy? And
Okay.
so, yeah, that's going to be big.
So Natalie, when you start your company, you can wait till iOS 5 before you make it all Apple. Until then, you can just enjoy your iTunes and the Apple client.
Right, yeah, I think I'll jump on that iOS 5 when it comes out. Sounds good to me. Okay, so then we have the iOS review that we just went over, and I think we're going to go into a break right now. So we just want to say thank you so much, Jason Brooks, for helping us out today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one. And we're going to go into a break right now, but stay with us because we have Paul Anderson, who's the marketing manager of Array Networks, coming up right after this break. So stay with us.
The Pulse Network. It's social TV.